Retail service workers of Reddit, what's the best instant karma you've seen happen to a rude customer? I work at an auto parts store. This one guy stole some $60 headlights and literally sprinted out the door. We went to look outside to try and get his license plate. Just in time to see him speed off, hit a curb, and blow out his tire. Called the cops and the dumbass got arrested and had to have his car towed. Working the window at McDonald's late night. Guy orders whatever and pulls up to the window. I'm cooking and handling the window, so I wasn't there when the customer pulled up. When I walked up to the window, I didn't see the FK with trash in his lap. I opened the window to take his card cash and he throws a bag of trash at me. I take a step back, bothered that I just got trash thrown at me, and I watch his car speed off. I'm pissed, but there's nothing I can do. A couple seconds later I hear a small bang of metal on metal. I walk to the lobby and look out the windows. The doucher bag slammed into a police cruiser who was about to loop around and use the drive-thru himself. Of course I also went to tell the officer what just happened inside. Standing at the counter of the pizza place I work at. Lady storms in and slams a pizza down on the counter. This isn't the F-King pizza I ordered. What the hell are you going to do about? She asked. I look at the pizza then at my buddy Nick and turn back to her and say, nothing. She then goes on a long rant telling how we are going to be fired. How stupid and incompetent we were. She actually told me I must be retro dead. Then asked why the hell we weren't going to do anything. I said because that pizza came from the pizza shop across the street. I think she actually managed to shrink in size and slink out looking so pathetic and beating I almost felt bad for laughing till tears dripped down my face as she slunk off. Guy comes in and is being a complete asshole. Not wanting to show ID to buy beer even though he looked 20 at the oldest. Constantly yelling and swearing. He also had parked in the handicap spot despite not having handicap tags or plates on his car. One of my regular customers, who is a sheriff's deputy, was also in the store. Saw how the guy was acting. Saw where he was parked. Went out. Got his ticket book. And wrote the guy a ticket. Guy realized he wasn't getting his beer. Went outside. To find he was getting ticketed. I could not stop laughing. Warehouse worker here. Customers have to show a card to shop. And even though we're not technically a grocery store, we don't allow pets. One dude tried to power walk past the employee at the entrance door holding a big pit bull puppy on a leash. We stopped him and told him he couldn't bring his dog inside and he lost IT. He's our best customer and he's here 5 times a week and he owns stock. Blah. Whatever. He demanded to know why we don't allow dogs. We explained how it's a food safety issue, especially with an untrained puppy. At this point our manager came over and just waved him through. BC no backbone customers always right. Well, not even 5 minutes later this dog squats in the middle of the main aisle and pees, followed by poop. The man turned so red and dragged the dog towards the exit, abandoning his groceries. We stopped him and asked him nicely to please clean up after his pup. That's the reason we don't allow them. Worked at Best Buy 10 or so years ago. This happened on Black Friday. Most of the customers were in bad mood since they'd been waiting hours to come in and stand in more lines. But this one lady was a raging bitch. After yelling at everyone in my department about how she needed the laptop that was on sale despite it being sold out, she proceeds to tell us she'll have the store closed down because she works with the city and knows the fire marshal and we have too many people in the store. So she calls him. We tell her to leave. And nothing happens to the store. However, we called them as well to report what she said. And she got fired from her job for abuse of power. I worked at a restaurant that was very popular for brunch and Mother's Day was probably our busiest day of the year. I had a customer call the evening before and asked for a table for 6 and he was incredibly rude when I informed him that this would simply be an impossibility. He kept getting more and more worked up, asking me to speak to my manager. At first I didn't want to pass the phone over. My manager wasn't the nicest guy and we were in the middle of a busy dinner shift. But my manager came up behind me and demanded to know why I had been on the phone for so long. I was like, FCK it. This customer isn't going to listen to me anyways, and gave the phone to Mac. Mac asked how he could help. Listened for about 15 seconds before telling this dude something like, "So you're tying up my hostess in the middle of dinner even though she's already told you nicely that we can't fit you and your goddamn family in the night before our busiest day of the year? FCK your buddy." And hung up the phone. More than a few decades ago I worked at Denny's. I had 2 male customers that decided to dine and dash. Got their license plate number and reported it to the cops and jokingly mentioned that they didn't even tip. Later that night they got pulled over for DUI. Cops recognized license plate number from the report. Brought them both back to the restaurant and forced them to pay the bill. After he was done paying, the cop just stood there and looked at them and said, "Well?" The guy sheepishly handed me my tip. Lady lays into me for the amount of the bill. Called me every bad word in the English language. Says we overbilled her. She requested I go through her order. Come to find out we underbilled her by a $1,000 due to a misplaced zero. The silence on the other line was so beautiful. Worked at a gas station some odd years ago, and the week before it had been snowing a lot, so the gas tankers got delayed due to safety reasons. A customer came in a pretty new Mercedes-Benz. Something like SLS 400 or something, and wanted the premium gas. I explained to him that the takers are delayed and we currently don't have any premium gasoline and that he could try the next station down the block. He started swearing at me personally like I has control over the gas delivery. He sped off, tires screeching, only to have his rear tire hit the curb. His rim got FK'd up really bad and couldn't drive it. I laughed at him. As a teenager I was working part-time at a convenience store. I was being trained by the late night cashier. This dude comes in and grabs a bunch of cans of vegetables and such. And comes to the counter and stacks the cans in a very specific way. Like a weird kind of pyramid on the counter. As the experienced cashier, my trainer, takes each can off the pyramid and rings it up. She reaches the end of the stack and we realize that the weirdo has his cock out and has it laying on the counter behind the cans. Without saying a word, the trainer grabs one of the big heavy metal cans of beans and slams it down as hard as she can on the guy's dick. He screamed an incredible scream of searing pain, grabbed his cock, and ran out of the store. She to me, comically, "You get all kinds on the late shift." I work at hotel's front desk. One day we had an Armenian guest who was claiming the room was not up to his standards and decided to make a big deal about it the next morning. He was so rude to the point of almost making a co-worker cry of desperation because she refused to compensate the night, as his arguments seemed really fake and invalid. Once he saw he was not going to get nothing back, he threw his receipt on the floor and power walked his way out into a very clean glass door that was recently cleaned. His sunglasses broke, causing him a small cut on the upper part of his nose. My co-worker and I couldn't stop laughing the second he walked out, even more mad. Worked at a liquor store. Customer came in extremely intoxicated. Couldn't really speak. Stumbling everywhere. We refused to sell to him and he flipped out. Ended up kicking him out with threat of calling the police. He went down the street to another store. And as he walked back past our store he yelled some very mean things at us and immediately tripped, shattering the bottle he bought on the sidewalk. Was a glorious sight. In the auto repair business, we must deal with a lot of passive aggressiveness from people displeased with having to shell out money for their cars. Once, a couple arrived to pick up a car which was parked in the first spot nearest the street. The husband was great and had approved the needed repairs in stride. The wife was a raging bitch, debating every line item of the estimate, asking pointless questions, demanding a cheaper price, threatening to take the car elsewhere or just get a new one. Anyway, the man made his way toward the office, but the woman made a beeline for the car, found the key stashed inside, threw the plastic seat cover to the wind, then started it up and drove off before the bill had been paid. cutting the turn too sharp and SCRPing the entire passenger side of the car badly on the low concrete planter. I saw this happen. The husband didn't. Never saw them again. I was a cashier at a grocery store. This guy with a full cart bitched and bullied employees until he was allowed to use my express checkout because he didn't want to wait in the regular lines. And my line only had 2 people in it. As soon as my floor manager allowed him and he had his cart unloaded, a tiny old lady with a walker who could barely stand got in line behind him. Everyone gave him dirty looks. He realized he f***ed up and tried to make a joke about it. Dead silence. I hope his save time was worth being an asshole. I was waiting at a hotel reception while a young staff member checked me in. A really obnoxious woman flounced over, interrupted what the girl was doing and proceeded to bitch about the standard of the kettle in her room. She ranted on and on about only having a normal kettle until I told her to wise up and get in bloody line behind me. She shouted that she had been traveling all day and that the room was not a suitable standard. I pointed out it was a King Airport hotel. We'd all been traveling all day and that she should just get lost. By now the girl at the desk was blood red and tearful. The woman banged her fist on the desk, demanded to see a manager, and then had a fit of coughing. She promptly shat herself all through her beige trousers. She didn't hang around after that. When a rude customer's card would be declined, it would always bring a real smile to my face. Working drive-through at a Tim Hortons and some asshole in a massive black truck parked too far away from the window and expected me to lean super far out to give him his change. He was real impatient and just really rude. I just shook my head and so he gets all pissed off and finally gets out of the truck and the door shut behind him. It was locked and he sat there for like 15 minutes and we had to call a tow truck. Sure, it pissed off everyone behind him, but at least they were all pissed off at him and not us. He acted like it was the biggest embarrassment of his life. Late to the party, but whatever. Back when I worked at a Blockbuster, we'd occasionally deal with thieves. The standard was just to let them go, not endanger employees or customers. One time this guy grabs some stuff and bolts. My manager runs after and points him out to 2 cops that had parked in our parking lot. They give chase. This guy dodges and weaves through people and traffic. He successfully crosses the street with cops on foot. Desperate to lose them, he jumps down some stairs to gain a lead but breaks both legs. Was working at a restaurant and there was this family who were extremely trashy and didn't look like they had a lot of money despite ordering a bunch of expensive steaks and drinking a bunch of drinks. They were rude the whole time, treating me like I was their butler or slave. Then asked for a manager to tell the manager that their steaks tasted rotten after they finished, and their drinks didn't taste like they had any alcohol in them. Again. Finished. Just trying to get free food. My manager noticed the way they were treating me and knew they were full of shit and refused to comp their meal like they were demanding. They began yelling and cussing at him and me and ended up trying to leave without paying, only to have their car not start in the parking lot, and my manager called the police and one of them got arrested for disorderly conduct and drug possession and the rest ended up walking after having their car towed. After purchasing a phone from me and being extremely rude and awful the whole time, they walked out of my store and instantly dropped their phone. It shattered and they were devastated. They had the nerve to ask me to do them a favor and add the warranty they earlier said no to cause it's a waste of money. And I had the pleasure of telling them it wasn't possible. I got yelled and screamed at. They threw their phone at me and security was called. Never saw them again after that. Thank God. Working cashier part-time. A rude shady guy wants to pay with a card and was surprised he had to type his PIN instead of signature. He continued being rude. I called our manager cause rules are we have to check for identification if a customer doesn't have the right PIN or signed a wrong signature. Turns out card was stolen. Called the cops. Guy is jailed. Alright. Bank worker. I had a customer throwing a fit once. Said he sees a charge for $50 on his account and blames us for not keeping his account secure. Throws a fit that rages on for a half hour. Turns out he forgot he used $50 for a mail cam service. This was discovered when my customer service rep looked at his account and googled who the charge was from. I was selling a woman a Nintendo 3DS for her son. I had given the son the box while I was ringing everything up because he was so happy to get his new toy. When it came time to talk about the accidental damage protection plan, she gave me an unreasonably hard time, making it sound like I accused her child of not being able to take care of his toys. The second she said that, the kid threw the box across the store into some shelves and knocked down a bunch of games. She bought the 4-year plan. I love when I get to tell a rude customer that their coupon is expired, not valid. Used to work in a call center for power. Guy called in angry he'd been disconnected for non-payment and threatened to drive to our town and cut everyone up if we didn't send someone out to reconnect him. We said we would then send the police out. Probably a nasty shock for him. I worked at Kohl's a while ago and came across a very rude lady who, no matter what we could do to help her, nothing made her happy. Finally, as she decided to leave, she got stopped by our loss prevention for shoving jersey in her purse. It wasn't even high-end stuff either. Just really cheap tea that was on clearance. When I was 18, I worked the Saturday night graveyard shift at a Jack in the Box is a shitty heap part of town. One night, a group of dickhead teens come through the drive-thru and order only water. It's free. It's a regular request. Our manager always made us give anyone and everyone free water even if that's all they ordered. So these kids pull up to the window and the shift leader started handing out these free waters. When my shift leader handed them the last water, the dickhead driver threw the cup of water right back through the open window and started to drive off. Shift leader grabbed the extra large soda on the counter, it was for the car after theirs, and throws it right at their car. It clips the top edge of their open window and sprays the inside of their car with Coke. Fast thinking and fantastic reflexes made for instant karma. In Hawaii at the resort bar. Kid that looks about 18. I'd have served him. Orders a drink. Barman asks for ID. Hands over ID. Sorry, this is expired. Kid loses his tea. Insults the barman. Threatens his livelihood. Etc. Fast forward 2 days. Sat in the bar at the airport. Same dish comes in. Orders a drink. Lady behind the bar asks for ID. Hands over ID. She looks at it and goes to hand it back. I pipe up. Check the expiration date. Dick move. But karma is, as they say, a bitch. I work at Starbucks. One day as I was working the drive-thru, we were having longer than normal wait times. As we were short-staffed, this one guy gets up to the window in a huff and starts yelling at me, complaining about his wait. I apologize and tell him his total. He literally throws his credit card at me, and it bounces off the bottom of the window directly underneath his truck. We look at each other for a second, and then he sends his daughter out of his truck to look for it. I inform them it's right under their truck. So he moves his truck up a bit, gets out, picks it up and hands it to me softly without making eye contact, as he is squeezing himself between the tail end of his truck and the wall of the building. Being pretty embarrassed as everyone behind him is watching. It was pretty satisfying. Used to work at GameStop and had a guest wanting to trade a copy of some older version of Call of Duty. He really didn't like the value and demanded to know how it could be so low, while this takes place in a GameStop. It was actually during a color trade promotion. So the value actually was decent, all things considered. I explained that it was an older version and it's not selling much anymore. He insists there is heavy demand still and turns around asking who wants to buy it. Everyone within earshot laughed him down and he left embarrassed. I was working as a waitress and a patron made me cry because her order was taking too long. My boss, who had always been cold with me, came over and told her if she's gonna be such a shitty, she's not allowed back and that he doesn't need her business. He then proceeded to kick her out without her food. I thanked him and he shrugged and walked away. But to this day it is still my favorite memory of the food service industry.